Anita Baker, the voice of a generation. Her music swept millions off their feet, but behind those soul-stirring melodies lies a story that not everyone knows. It's a tale of groundbreaking success, heartbreak, and resilience, all wrapped in a life that's anything but ordinary. Today we're looking into Anita Baker's incredible journey, filled with highs, lows, and everything in between. Anita Denise Baker, the iconic singer with that unforgettable, soulful voice, was born on January 26, 1958. Her childhood? A mix of love and surprises. She spent her first 12 years in Detroit with a couple named Granville and Mary Lewis, a minister and his wife. Anita thought they were her grandparents, a belief that deeply shaped her early life. She once told Vibe magazine about the warmth and closeness she felt during those years. She was so attached to the Lewis family's daughters that she thought of them as her sisters. This foundation of love helped shape the resilience and emotion that poured into her music later in life. On the other hand, Anita's world was flipped upside down when Granville and Mary both passed away in quick succession. The loss of them was a traumatic experience for her because they had been her rock and her parents in every meaning of the word. However, when she was in the midst of her sadness, life presented her with yet another unexpected turn of events. She found out that Granville and Mary were not her grandparents. As a matter of fact, they had no connection whatsoever to her. During the time that Anita was being delivered, it was discovered that her biological mother was just 16 years old, and her father was not present. Her mother, who was unable to provide care for a newborn at such a young age, left Anita with the Lewises in the hopes that they would be able to provide her with the love and stability that she was unable to accomplish. Acquiring this knowledge was a lot for Anita to take in and process. Her heart was broken at first, but she eventually found a way to make peace with it. She said that it crushed her heart at first. In an interview with Essence, Anita gave her perspective, saying, "She was just a child and couldn't care for me." It took her years to come to grips with the decision that her mother made, but eventually she found forgiveness and acceptance for her mother's actions. Anita discovered comfort in the one-of-a-kind affection that surrounded her, despite the complex web of relationships that she had known throughout her childhood. In an interview with the Sun Sentinel, she described her childhood as being similar to a patchwork quilt made up of her family, friends, and relatives. Despite the fact that they were a close-knit community, they did not always realize how everyone was connected to one another. This unorthodox beginning helped mold the Anita Baker that the world is familiar with today. A lady who transformed the difficulties of life into music that is profoundly emotional and continues to reverberate with millions of people. At one point in time, Anita said, "I still couldn't figure it all out." There were a great deal of parts that were missing from the puzzle that was her family. She added that while she was growing up, people not only did not talk about these things, but they also did not ask questions about them. The narrative of Anita's family took yet another turn after the deaths of Granville and Mary Lewis. According to the website of I Love Old School Music, she came to the realization that Lois Landry, a woman whom she had always thought was her older sister, was in fact her aunt. It was during a period of significant transition and loss for Anita that she came to this realization. Lois and her husband took action, providing her with a secure home and adopting her as their own daughter in accordance with the law. Consequently, this event marked the beginning of a new phase in Anita's life. Following the passage of time, Anita developed a profound admiration for Lois, whom she affectionately referred to as her Earth Mother. Even though Anita was thankful for Lois's care, things became more problematic when her biological mother, who had not been expecting her, showed up. Anita was left with unanswered questions and feelings that she had a hard time processing as a result of the experience, which caused a storm of emotions to be triggered. During an interview with Vibe magazine, Anita pondered on the impact the meeting had on her life and said, "Your beginnings are important. It is my belief that the reason I got into difficulty later on was because I had met her in such a manner." Her teenage years were really difficult to say the least. Anita frequently found herself in conflict with norms and authority while she was working at Lois's beauty salon and attempting to avoid getting into trouble. Ultimately, she was expelled from a number of high schools because she allowed her defiance to get the better of her. However, those challenging years did not define her. Rather, they only served to strengthen her resolve to achieve success. In order to achieve success, Anita had to overcome several obstacles. It was a time filled with obstacles, tenacity, and perseverance. She began by being a member of a number of bands, one of which was by the name of Chapter 8. At one point, the band was able to secure a record deal and even go on tour in the United States. However, just when things appeared to be getting better, their record label merged with Arista Records, and the band came to an end as a result. This unanticipated obstacle compelled Anita to put her aspirations in the music industry on hold. In an effort to make ends meet, she took on tasks that were considered to be mundane, such as working as a cook, a waitress, and even a receptionist. Her enthusiasm for music, on the other hand, never faltered. With the intention of pursuing her aspirations, she ultimately made the courageous choice to relocate to Los Angeles in order to begin a new chapter in her life. There, destiny had something more in store for us. It turned out that Anita's new neighbors were a band that was on the rise and would eventually become the famed New Edition. She was completely unaware that her dogged determination and passion for music were about to pay off in a significant way. The signing of Anita's first solo contract with Beverly Glenn Music in 1983 was a significant turning point in her path in the music industry. Her first album, titled The Songstress, was released, marking the beginning of her career as a solo artist. However, it is obvious that nothing came easily. After a short time, Anita became aware that the contract she had signed was not ideal. She was adamant about getting what she earned, and she fought back against the unfair treatment she found herself receiving. In spite of the fact that her burning resolve caused some people to characterize her as difficult, Anita's strong will proved to be an indispensable asset in navigating the challenging world of the music industry. It was not in Anita's nature to back down. When it came to her professional life, she once stated, "They call me a bio because I know what I want and I know how to ask for it." This statement exemplifies her assertive and straightforward approach to the matter. Therefore, her perseverance was rewarded. Upon being released from her previous contract, she made the decision to sign with Elektra Records, a move that ultimately led to her ascent to the top of the music industry. In 1986, Anita released her second studio album titled Rapture, which marked the beginning of her reign over her career. Not only did she perform as the singer this time, but she also served as the executive producer and was instrumental in the composition of a significant number of the songs. Over 8 million copies of Rapture were sold all over the world, largely due to the album's indelible song, Sweet Love, which contributed to the album's extraordinary success. Anita's powerful voice and excellent songwriting skills won over the hearts of listeners, and before long she was performing in cities all across the country, which allowed her to establish an even larger fan following. However, something personal occurred to her at one of her performances in 1986 that would forever alter the course of her life. A real estate developer named Walter Bridgeforth, who would soon become a significant figure in her life, took notice of her and became interested in her. It was a humorous story that Anita told Vibe magazine about how they first became acquainted. Anita, who was not one to back down, responded in a humorous manner, "For 6 albums, you can get a hug, brother." After their lighthearted discussion, Walter handed Anita his phone number. Walter had made a playful demand for a hug by stating, "I've got 6 sisters, and I just bought each of them your album." Anita began contacting him every night in a short amount of time after initial contact. However, their relationship was not devoid of difficulties throughout that time. In spite of the fact that Anita was aware of the fact that Walter had been in a relationship with another person for the past 5 years, she continued to see him. Anita found herself in a difficult situation because she was the side chick. Things went from bad to worse. He would tell her, "I've got company," when she called him, which was his way of letting her know that he was back with his other partner. There were occasions when she would contact him, but he would tell her that he had company. Anita finally realized that she had reached her breaking point after going through all of the emotional ups and downs that their convoluted relationship had to offer. She was in need of answers, and she was not going to accept anything less than what she could get. She took a courageous action in order to force him to confront the truth about their circumstance. She purchased a card for him and wrote, I love you, I enjoy you, but if that's what you need to do, I respect that, and I won't bother you anymore. Although it was one of the most difficult things Anita had ever done, she knew that it was something she needed to do in order to achieve the closure she had been seeking, and to give herself the peace of mind she had been seeking. In light of this, she made the difficult choice to withdraw from the situation. After making the decision to concentrate on her work, Anita traveled to New York City in order to give a performance at Radio City Music Hall. During the evening before her major performance, she received an unexpected phone call from the operator of the hotel. Walter was on the line. However, Anita had already made up her decision. Due to the fact that she was putting her feelings first, she declined to receive his call. She had had enough of the unpredictability that came with a non-exclusive relationship, and she had no intention of getting back into that cycle on her own. However, Walter was not going to give up. It was every 10 minutes that he called her. When the hotel operator continued to refuse to connect with him, he left a message that read, "The other relationship is over, and I'm coming to New York tomorrow." After giving it some thought, Anita made the decision to answer the call. Everything was different by the time they had finished talking to each other. They went ahead and made their relationship official by formally deciding to be boyfriend and girlfriend. It was a tremendous relief for Anita to reach this point. She suddenly had the feeling that the mental upheaval that she had been coping with for such a long time was now behind her. With Walter's dedication, she realized that she was no longer only a supporting character. Rather, she was someone who was of genuine significance to him. Anita and Walter married the knot in 1988, which was a significant event in her personal life and marked a big milestone. Through the publication of her album, Giving You the Best That I Got, which was a huge hit, she was able to take her career to new heights in the same year. Her rise to prominence in the music industry was bolstered by the fact that the record was awarded 3 Grammys. Furthermore, she embarked on a tour with the great Luther Vandross, but the journey did not go as smoothly as originally anticipated. According to reports that were published in the Baltimore Sun, tensions between Anita and Luther were increasing by the time the tour was underway. Anita, who was known for her fiery attitude, began to take her frustrations out on everyone around her, including the members of her band, flight attendants, and even executives from record labels. At one point, the venue had to build up special curtains backstage in order to separate Anita and Luther because the animosity between the two celebrities reached such a high level. This information was provided by a gossip website. It was noted by Anita's management that her behavior had always been a little too intense, particularly when it comes to her personal space. It was revealed that Anita had always favored the idea of retaining a small circle of trusted individuals behind the scenes, and she did not want any other individuals present. A fact that was unknown to the public at the time was that Anita was actually carrying a child while she was on tour. In a subsequent statement, she made a veiled reference to the possibility that pregnant hormones were the cause of some of her mood swings and outbursts. During this difficult time, Anita was unfortunate enough to experience a miscarriage, which only served to emphasize the emotional burden that she was already bearing. Subsequently, in the year 1990, as she was working on her album titled Compositions, she was dealt yet another devastating blow: a second premature abortion. Anita had already committed to going on tour, so she had no choice but to push through the sadness and continue moving forward with her profession. This was an extremely difficult experience for her, but despite the grief, she had already committed to going on tour. However, as the tour progressed, things only became more difficult. Anita was going through a difficult emotional time and pleaded with her colleagues more than anything to allow her to go home. Her schedule continued to get more frantic, with even more concert dates being added, and she did not get the well-deserved vacation that she required. Anita reached her breaking point in January 1991, while she was in Chicago for a promotional event. As soon as she stepped into her hotel suite at the Ritz-Carlton, she was absolutely pushed over the brink by everything that was in the room. Anita noted in an interview with the Washington Post that when she travels, she requires things to be ordered and set up in a particular manner with regard to how they are arranged. Although she acknowledged that it might sound strange, she found that it helped her feel as if she had some control over her otherwise chaotic life. Because she was continually staying in hotel rooms and traveling for more than 200 days per year, she needed to establish a routine, even if it was just a few minor elements, in order to maintain her mental health. She did it as a means of coping with the immense strain that she was experiencing while on tour. When Anita entered her hotel room in Chicago and noticed that everything was organized on the left side of the entryway, she experienced a profound sense of disorientation. She found herself absolutely off kilter as a result. Because of the overwhelming amount of stress that she was experiencing, she began pacing in circles while crying hysterically. To her good fortune, her husband was there to provide assistance. As soon as he saw how distressed she was, he made the decision to cancel the remaining dates of the tour and bring her back to Michigan, where she would be able to recuperate from the mental and physical strain that she had been experiencing. It was in the year 1992 when Anita discovered that she was expecting her third child. This time, her physician recommended a different medical treatment in order to increase the likelihood that she will be able to deliver the baby to full term. Despite the fact that the treatment was essential, it came with a few constraints, which made it difficult for Anita to concentrate on her singing and find inspiration for new songs. In spite of this, the treatment was successful, and Anita was able to bring the pregnancy to its inevitable conclusion. She welcomed her son, Walter Jr., into the world in January of 1993, marking the beginning of a period of her life that was filled with joy. With the arrival of her second kid, Edward, in May of 1994, Anita discovered that she was pregnant once more, just a few months after the birth of her first child, Walter Jr. Her life became even more joyful as a result of the expansion of her biological family. Anita maintained her concentration on her music profession in spite of the difficulties that came with being a mother. The year in question saw the release of her fifth studio album, titled Rhythm of Love. Her development as an artist was well reflected in the album, which was a lovely piece of work that blended personal moments with her professional devotion. Immediately following the birth of her children, Anita made the decision to take a break from her career as a musician in order to concentrate on her family. The decision was made by Anita to devote more time to the upbringing of her children and the maintenance of her marriage. Some people were curious about whether or not she would ever return to the music industry, but she was confident that her absence was only a temporary pause. She was well aware of the significance of her family, but she was confident that her passion for music would eventually lead her back to the stage when the time was perfect. Without much delay, she began the process of creating a new album. However, due to the fact that she is a perfectionist, the procedure became rather difficult for her. Because she was so adamant on producing something truly remarkable, she was under a great deal of strain. As part of an interview with the Los Angeles Times, she discussed her concerns on the possibility of failure. She stated that she was concerned that her friends and the music executives would move on to the next great thing if she did not achieve success. Creating music was not the only thing that Anita was interested in. She also wanted to make something that would be memorable and leave an impression that would stay. When she began to experience the effects of personal troubles, life presented her with even more difficulties to overcome. It was revealed by her in an interview with Essence magazine that her Earth mother was suffering Alzheimer's illness, and that other members of her family were also struggling with health issues. Due to everything that was going on, Anita made the decision to remain closer to her house in order to be there for her loved ones. Her personal life continued to interfere with her job, despite the fact that she had even established a recording studio in her own home. In the course of her recording sessions, she frequently received phone calls from the medical facility, which compelled her to interrupt what she was doing. In a tragic turn of events, Anita lost her mother on Earth, followed by her adoptive father, and then eventually her biological mother. She discovered that she was doomed to be mired in a horrible cycle of loss and grief. She would first try to get over her grief by burying a member of her family, and then she would be confronted with yet another devastating loss. The more complicated her personal life became, the more difficult it became for her to balance the rising duties she had as a mother with the difficulties that she was experiencing in her marriage. Unfortunately, her marriage started to fall apart at the same time as her children needed more attention. Anita disclosed that she had submitted a petition for divorce throughout an open and honest conversation with the Baltimore Sun. On the other hand, she and her husband were able to work through their differences and establish a reconciliation after attending a number of therapy sessions together. Having finally reached a point where she felt ready to concentrate on her job once more, Anita's marriage had begun to recover and her family life had become more solid. She was more determined than ever to perform on stage and do what she loved than she had ever been before. During the process of getting ready for the next phase of her life, both personally and professionally, she made a significant choice. She decided to recruit a new manager who had a genuine understanding of the importance of maintaining a healthy balance between her professional and personal life. Despite the fact that Anita had a packed performance schedule, her new manager realized how important it was for her to spend meaningful time with her children. Because of this support, Anita was able to resume her touring career, secure in the knowledge that her family life was being well cared for. During this time period, her husband was an integral part of the process of caring for their children, and even took on the task of opening an IHOP restaurant in the vicinity of Detroit. Following a 10-year hiatus from the release of records, Anita made a significant return to the music industry in 2004 with the release of her album titled My Everything on Blue Note Records. Fans were overjoyed to hear fresh songs from the legendary vocalist, and 2 years later in 2005 she released a Christmas album to follow up her previous release. On the other hand, despite the enthusiasm surrounding her return, she continued to have personal challenges that impacted her life. Her marriage to Walter, who was her husband, went through yet another separation, which ultimately resulted in their divorce. Giving You the Best That I Got and Rhythm of Love were two of her most successful records, and as part of the divorce settlement, Walter was awarded 50% of the profits from both of those albums. On the other hand, following the divorce, a conflict emerged regarding a royalty payment of $112,000 that Walter had received from Anita. In order to find a solution to the problem, a music contract expert who was selected by the court was called in to investigate the case. The situation was resolved when the expert came to an agreement that was satisfactory to both Anita and Walter, putting an end to the conflict. Anita was able to refocus her attention on the activity that she enjoys the most, making music, now that the divorce is behind her. As more evidence of her extraordinary talent, she recorded a cover of Tyrese's smash song Lately, which resulted in her being nominated for a Grammy Award. The song was supposed to be included on her album Only Forever when it was first released, but despite the success of the single, the album as a whole has not yet been made available to the public. Fans have been excitedly anticipating the release of the album, and the delay has left many of them wondering when it would eventually be made available to get. In spite of the challenges she has had in her personal life, Anita has maintained her involvement in the music industry, which is evidence of her commitment to her profession. While also producing music that strikes a chord with her listeners, she has triumphed over obstacles on a consistent basis. Anita made the announcement in 2018 that she would be retiring from performing and will launch a farewell concert tour in order to communicate with her devoted followers. Nevertheless, she astonished everyone by signing up for a residency in Las Vegas in 2019, which was just 1 year after she had previously announced that she would be completely withdrawing from the public eye. Through the residency, she was able to continue performing for her devoted audience while also taking pleasure in the stability that comes with remaining in a single spot.